Hello YouTube, Dave here again, and today I'm going to be looking at the brand new Magic the Gathering Duel decks, Merfolk versus Goblins. So, Duel decks is one of my favorite products, probably alongside of the Planeswalker decks. And what these are is these are two 60-card pre-constructed decks that are meant to be played directly against one another. So the two decks are meant to be balanced towards facing off against each other, which is usually the case for most of these decks. Most of the ones that I have, like the other dual decks that I have in my collection, are Blessed versus Cursed, which was fairly well balanced, as was Nissa versus Omnixilus. I found was fairly evenly matched when we played the two games, although I think Omnixilus had a bit of a slight edge in that one. And then there was the Mind versus Might, which I actually had played a few games with, and that one actually worked out a lot better than I thought. I really thought that the Might deck was just going to stomp everything, but the Mind deck could do some pretty impressive stuff once it got going. The only one that I have that's completely one-sided or just blows the other deck out of the water was the Eldrazi versus Zendikar. And the Zendikar deck just sucked. I mean, there were some great cards in there, but just nothing could deal with the Eldrazi deck. So I'm hoping that this is more like those other ones and not like the Eldrazi versus Zendikar. But let's just have a look here. And we got the packaging, and I like the color of the package actually, even though it doesn't necessarily, I mean, it fits the Goblins I guess a bit more. Hoping that they're not favoring the Goblins with these decks. The top actually looks kind of nice. I like the coloration of the packaging here. And then we've got on the back, it says Tidal Guardians versus Reckless Vandals. It says, get ready to master the waves or hurl a goblin grenade. The proud defenders of the sea and the destructive mountain mobs are finally settling their difference. Grab a friend and battle with these ready-to-play decks. So it just says here, these decks showcase cards from across Magic history, including 2 premium cards and 4 additional cards that all feature new artwork. Now, I'm not sure which ones. I want to say that they're probably some of the ones shown here. I'm not entirely sure because I really only started with Shadows over Innistrad. But the contents are 2 60-card decks, 10 tokens, 2 deck boxes, strategy insert, quick reference guide, and 2 spin-down counters. I also have some sleeves here that I'm ready to put these decks into. I've got the Dragon Shield. I like these sleeves an awful lot. Like, these are sort of my favorite ones. I used to get the Ultra Pro ones, but these are the sleeves that I use now. I love the fact that they come in a box that you can use as a deck box if you need to, especially with some of these earlier Magic products where the deck boxes were just large enough to carry the 60 cards unsleeved deck, which wasn't great. I have a few left over, which is why I bought the same color. That way, for just buying one thing of 100 sleeves, I have enough to actually sleeve up the entirety of both of these decks. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this open. I like to collect these cases and the boxes, so I'm going to be opening it from the bottom, and we'll do sort of an unboxing, I guess, show what's inside. Alright, so we got it opened here, and I just want to have a look before I actually pull this out. The back of the box shows a blue life counter for the Merfolk and a red one for the Goblins. And one of the things that I've always noticed with these dual decks, in the past at least, is that the dice, the spin down counters, are always just random colors, and they don't necessarily have to match up with the colors of the decks. So I'd be interested to see, because they actually have these shown on the packaging, if they're going to be those colors. Because that would be great. Now, they do also look like they only have just the generic Planeswalker symbol, like this one here. One suggestion for Wizards of the Coast would be to start actually having the set symbol for your dual decks on the dice, especially if you're going to have the dice, be consistent all the way through and not just random ones, which I'm hoping is what they're going to do. So we'll just open this up, slide it out, and nope, they are not the same as was shown on the back, and that's really disappointing. So as you can see, they're just 2 random colored decks, or not decks, dice, which is really disappointing because you've got a mono blue deck and a mono red deck. I mean, there's the one red dice, which is fine, but wow, that is really on there. And that is an awful sound. I apologize just for the plastic on plastic sound. There we go. Wow. Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is more of a green dice than a blue one, which it's always just kind of bothered me because, you know, the back of the package again just shows what looks like a really nice solid blue with sort of like some white speckled, markings on them. And that dice would have been great. And, you know, the red one's okay, but it's got, you know, like the blue spots. And so these are just the random ones. I've got a ton of these colored dice already. Like here's my... So just to show, I guess it's only my second one of these red dice. But I've already got, you know, 3 other of these sort of greenish ones. And I don't actually think I took even the, I don't think I actually took the dice out of my Nissa versus Ob Nixilis one. I think I just left those in there because I had so many of them already. But anyway, we'll just kind of set that aside for now. Or those aside. And so here we go. We got our dual deck strategy thing. With our deck lists. A little bit of information there. It's nice artwork, and on the back you just have a little bit of information as well. You got the Merfolk and the Goblin. I don't think I usually show these off, so I thought I would do that for this. We've got our deck boxes, and once again, it does look like these are similar to what they had in the Mind versus Might dual deck, which will hold the sleeved cards, which I really like. So let's just see if we can just get that set up there. Now, the one thing that I found was it was difficult to get the sleeve deck and sleeved tokens in there. So if there's one room for improvement is maybe make this just a little bit wider so that you can get the tokens in there too if you want to sleeve those up. Because unlike most tokens that you get with the booster packs, these ones actually have like the backing of the Magic the Gathering backing on it. So I don't know. But there we got our Merfolk box and our Goblin box, which looks really cool. So let's get to the decks themselves. Let's start off with, I'm just going to show off these foil mythic cards here first because I want to get those in sleeves right away. But the first one we have is Master of the Waves. So it is 3 and a blue for a 2/1 Merfolk Wizard, which has protection from red. And it says elementals you control get +1/+1. It says when Master of the Waves enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/0 blue elemental creature tokens equal to your devotion to blue. And devotion is based off of how many of the actual symbols you have for the blue mana. So for example, just looking at the next card here in the deck, it has 2 of the blue icons. So if I had this out with this, then my devotion to blue would be 3. So there you go. So that's actually pretty cool. I never really played decks with the devotion mechanic really in it before. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. And I just want, like I said, I want to get that into a sleeve. Normally with the dual decks, I try to sleeve the 2 different decks with different colored sleeves, but I could only afford the one thing of sleeves and I had a bunch left over anyway, so we're just going to do that. The next one is for the Goblin deck, the Warren Instigator, for 2 red. For a 2 red for a 1/1 with double strike. And it says whenever Warren Instigator deals damage to an opponent, you may put a Goblin creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So that sounds pretty decent. And you can tell this is custom artwork for the dual decks because he's in the water. Alright, so those are our 2 premium cards. The 2 feature cards, I guess, for each of the decks. Like I said, I just want to get those in the sleeve right away. So let's actually look at the Goblin deck first. Actually, you know what? No, let's look at the Merfolk deck first. Just because with the Ixalan Planeswalker decks, the first set coming out there, I feel like we're getting quite a few Merfolk, because the Jace Ingenious Mind Mage deck was a Merfolk deck. So let's get the Merfolk one out of the way first. I'm only going to describe the rares, but what I will do is just zoom in a bit and hope that focuses. So if you want to read any of the abilities of the cards other than the rares, then you can certainly do so. If something really strikes my fancy, then I'll read that off as well. But the first one we have here is Harbinger of the Tides. 2 blue for a 2/2. So whenever you may cast Harbinger of Tides as though it had flash if you pay 2 more to cast it. So if you pay 2 colorless and 2 blue, or 4 mana total, you can flash it in. Whenever Harbinger of the Tides enters the battlefield, you may return target tapped creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So you could do that sort of in combat if you have like a big creature that's going to stomp you. Flash this in for 4 and put it back in your opponent's hand. So there you go. It's a decent one. Master of the Pearl Trident. Not just the Merfolk, the Pearl Trident, which I'm hoping is in here. I really haven't looked at the deck list. But we got Master of the Pearl Trident, so it's another 2/2 for 2. And these are both, the 2 is actually, like, usually with 2 cost things, you tend to have like 1 colorless and 1 of the color. So this can make that devotion mechanic really something kind of powerful. Other Merfolk creatures you control have +1/+1 and have Island Walk. So they can't be blocked as long as defending player controls an island, which doesn't really think is going to happen in this one because these are all mountains, unless there's a card in here that can turn a land into an island. We'll have to kind of see, because otherwise the Island Walk ability is pretty well useless. Tidebinder Mage. When Tidebinder Mage enters the battlefield, another 2/2 for 2, same 2 blue. So yeah. When it enters the battlefield, tap target red or green creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Tidebinder Mage. So you can tap down one of their big creatures. Don't know how many big creatures are going to be in the Goblin deck, but you can tap down one of their more powerful creatures and leave it there as long as this thing's on the field. So that's pretty cool as well. Wake Thrasher. So this is 3, so 2 colorless and a blue for a 1/1. Whenever a permanent you control becomes untapped, Wake Thrasher gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So that could be pretty good as well, depending on how you use it. And Merfolk Sovereign. So 1 and 2 blue for a 2/2. Other Merfolk creatures you control get +1/+1. And you can tap this. Target Merfolk creature can't be blocked this turn. Alright, and then we have Engulf the Shore. I think this in Shadows over Innistrad? The card looks familiar anyway. So it's 3 and a blue. Return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands that you control. Less than, okay. All creatures. Yeah, that's actually pretty good too. Surprising amount of rares in this. Normally I think it's only about 4 or 5 rares, and we're already up to Mythic. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this would be our 8th potential rare here. So we got Misdirection. I actually like this card, quite a bit. So 3 and 2 blue. You may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay Misdirection's mana cost. Change the target of target spell with a single target. So let's just say, for example, I don't think it's in this deck, but let's just say, opponent casts something like, Lightning Bolt's not really a current spell, but let's just say they cast some sort of removal spell. You can exile a blue card from your hand instead of paying a 5 mana, and you can redirect that to one of their own creatures, which is kind of cool. Or if it's direct damage, you can direct it back at the player. So actually, I like that. I like that one quite a bit. That's an awesome card. Mindspring. X and 2 blue to draw X cards. Another rare. I'm actually getting quite a few rares here, which I like. I'm not going to argue with that. Next one is Cold-Eyed Silky. So it is 1, and you can spend either 2 blue or 2 green or any combination. It also has Island Walk. It's for a 1/1. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw that many cards. So that's pretty good if you can find a way to... Okay, here we go. So here, this is where the Island Walk comes into play. So we got Tidal Warrior. It's a 1/1 for 1. You can tap it. Target land becomes an island until the end of turn. So that is awesome. There's only one of them in here, unfortunately. Or it looks like there's only one of them. So it would be awesome if there was a couple of those, but just in case they find a way to deal with it. Rootwater Hunter. So steal, you can tap to deal damage. So we're getting into our commons and uncommons at this point. So like I said, I'm not going to go through and read off all their abilities, but if you want to pause the video, I'll try to make sure that you can see everything that's on the card. But we got Scroll Thief. Whenever it deals damage to a player, you draw a card. You got 2 of those. Let's just bring these over. Steambed Aquatex. Target Merfolk creature gets +1/+1 and gains Island Walk until end of turn. Or you can tap it, target land becomes an island. So yeah, there are definitely ways to get the best out of Island Walk, which is great. There's 3 of those? Those are 4 of those. Nope, 3 of those. Ink Fathom Divers. So a lot of Island Walk here. Merfolk Looter. Draw a card and then discard a card. Merfolk Wayfinder. So flying, enters battlefield, reveal top 3 cards of your library. Put all island cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Merfolk Regery. Another Rootwater Hunter, so I guess, okay. They did this with the Planeswalker decks too, where they had some of the duplicates, instead of being like right next to each other. I don't want to go too far back because I'm pretty sure I saw this guy already. Yeah, there he is there. But instead of going like and having the duplicates together, which they do for most things, like one of them was like way deeper into the deck, and I don't understand that because it's not like they're trying to make these look like they're already pre-shuffled. But there you go. Tidal Warrior, so a lot of things that can make things an island, which is great. Tidal Courier. I'd still like to see a Merfolk with a Pearl Trident, but we're not, unfortunately. Which was just a 1/1 for 1. Like, nothing special about it, but I've been watching a lot of the Pro Jared Plays series where he was doing the Magic the Gathering Chandelure. And the first deck that he had like the Merfolk, the Pearl Trident. So anyway, we got some islands here. So let's just look at the different arts. I actually like that one quite a bit. Actually, I like all of these. These are really nice, although that looks more like a river than an island. That's actually, that one there at the beach is probably, I like that one a lot. So those are just those. So where this is a monocolored deck, like I said, I never looked at the deck list before I bought this. I like to be sort of genuinely surprised by, okay, cool. So there is actually some interesting or different lands, since there's no, like, enter the battlefield tap dual lands. But this one here, these are cycling, so Lonely Sandbar enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap to add a blue, or you can spend a blue to cycle it. Oh, Blighted Cataract. Tap it to add a colorless, or 5 and a blue. You can tap it to sacrifice it and to draw 2 cards. Alright, Aquatex Will. Put a flood counter on target land. That land is an island in addition to its other types for as long as it has a flood counter on it. If you control Merfolk, draw a card. 2, 3, 4 of those. For 1. Odds are you're going to be probably drawing a card for 1, or at least making an island for Island Walk permanently. Unless Red has a way of getting rid of lands. Essence Scatter. 1 in the blue, counter target creature spell. 2 of those. Tidal Wave. Create a 5/5 blue wall creature token with Defender. Sacrifice it at the beginning of your the next end step. It's an instant, so you can use that to get a blocker out. Claustrophobia. Tap target creature doesn't untap. This card's been the bane of my existence in several things. I want to say that this was in the Jace deck, Planeswalker deck, because I remember when I played against it, I was always worried when, maybe it was something else actually, but when they had the mana open to cast it, I was always afraid that they'd have it. So anyway, you got Triton Tactics for 1 blue. Up to 2 target creatures you get +0/+3 until end of turn. Untap those creatures at this turn's next end of combat. Tap each creature that was blocked by one of those creatures this turn, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap phase. So that's mouthful. Concentrate. 2 and 2 blue. Draw 3 cards. And our tokens. So we got some elementals and probably our wall. Yep. So there you go. That was the Merfolk deck. And there are some pretty decent cards in there, actually. I'm happy with a lot of the stuff that's in there. Love having a misdirect. Just think that that card's really cool. Probably because I've seen it used a fair amount in another channel that I watch, Forest Bear Studios. They have some awesome Magic games they play, and misdirect gets used in a lot of theirs. So anyway, up next we'll look at the Goblin deck. Once I get it open here. The Merfolk deck opened up so easily that the Goblins are going to give me some trouble. There we go. Alright, so Goblin Diplomats. 1 and a red for 2/1. You can tap it. Each creature attacks this turn if able. And you can see it's kind of, looks like it's mooning. Yeah, they're mooning and making fun of the other creatures when you need to convey that special kind of message. Always like the flavor text on a lot of the Goblin cards. Goblin Rabble Master. 2 and a red for a 2/2. Other Goblin creatures you control attack each turn if able. At the beginning of each combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red Goblin token creature with haste. Whenever Goblin Rabble Master attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking Goblin. So that guy could get pretty big. Be interesting to see if there's a way to give him trample. Otherwise, he's still only a 2 toughness creature. Goblin Chieftain, 1 and 2 red for a 2/2 with haste. Other Goblin creatures you control get +1/+1 and have haste as well. Goblin Goon, we've got a Goblin Mutant, 3 and a red for 6/6. Goblin Goon can't attack unless you control more creatures than defending player. Goblin Goon can't block unless you would control more creatures than attacking player. Alright, so after Goblin Goon, we've got Goblin Raise Runners. So 2 and 2 red for a 3/4. For 1 and a red, sacrifice a land, so that's how you can get rid of those flood counters, I guess. Put a +1/+1 counter on Goblin Raise Runners. At the beginning of your end step, you may have Goblin Raise Runners deal damage equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on it to target player. So that's pretty good. Way to get rid of the Island Walk ability as well, so that's pretty cool. Krenko Mob Boss, legendary creature, Goblin Warrior. So for 2 and 2 blue, or 2 red, I don't know why I'm saying 2 blue. 2 and 2 red for a 3/3, legendary creature. You can tap it to create X 1/1 red Goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of Goblins you control. So that's really good. One of the things that the Mind vs. Might dual decks had, it had a fair number of legendary creatures in it. And I haven't noticed too many in this one. I think that was the first one that I actually noticed. But I guess they were great for cannibalizing for commander decks. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, these dual decks kind of do more of that as well. And where there's a lot of only one-ofs in these decks, then I guess, you know, if you wanted to make a Goblin commander deck, then you've got a commander there. Relentless Assault, 2 and 2 red. Untap all creatures that attack this turn. After this main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. So, yeah, it's almost like taking an extra turn type of thing. It's pretty cool. We got Brittle Effigy. For 1, you can spend 4 and tap it. Exile Brittle Effigy, exile target creature. Goblin Charbelcher. That's a lot of text. So for 4, it's an artifact. You can spend 3 and tap it. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Goblin Charbelcher deals damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to target creature or player. If the revealed land card was a mountain, Goblin Charbelcher deals double that damage instead. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in any order. So that's actually really good because, you know, this is a mono red deck, so unless you draw one of the cycle lands, which I think just says land, then you're going to be getting a mountain. Then we got Foundry Street Denizen, which is a 1/1 for 1. Whenever another red creature enters battlefield under control, this gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So that's pretty good. Battle Squadron, 3 and 2 red for a flyer with power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control, so that can get really out of hand really quickly. Then it's got Goblin Tunnelers. Like I said, I'm not going to read the rest of these off unless they seem really interesting to me. But you can pause or just read what they do while I go through the names. So we got the Boggart Brute, Menace, 2 of those. Goblin Glory Chaser with Renown, so whenever this creature deals damage to a player, if it isn't renowned, put a +1/+1 counter on it and it becomes renowned. As long as it is renowned, it has Menace, so you can get basically a +2 or 2/2 with Menace if it hits once. Ember Hauler. I'm going to read this one because it's 2 red for a 2/2. You can spend 1, sacrifice Ember Hauler, deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and then it just says Flurk's crude goblin language didn't differentiate between I bring the flame and I am the flame. Goblin War Driver. Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So lots of ways to beef up the goblins. Gem Palm Incinerator, which you can cycle. When you cycle it, you may have it deal X damage to target creature where X is the number of goblins on the battlefield. So that could, it's only target creature though, so thankfully, if it's target player with all the things that can add tokens and goblins and stuff on there, can get pretty mean. Haste, when Goblin Ring Leader. When it enters battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all goblin cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So at least it doesn't go into the battlefield. Another Founder Seed. So they did this again. I don't know why they have a duplicate of a card stashed way further down in the deck when all the other duplicates are all together. It's a weird thing they did with the Planeswalker decks, and now both of these decks have it as well, which is just really bizarre. I don't know why they do that. It's so far back that you almost question whether you saw this card before or not. So here we got our mountains. Let's just look at the lands here. That's actually a really nice one. I like that one quite a bit. That was probably my favorite one, actually. Yeah, that one there. I think that's probably my favorite of the arts. And that one's pretty good too. I like that one a lot as well. I mean, all the arts are really nice. And do we have the cycle? Yeah, we do. Okay, so we got the Forgotten Cave, which cycles. Now it doesn't say mountain on it. You can tap it for a red mana, but it doesn't actually say mountain. So with the Charbelcher's ability, you just got to be sort of mindful of that. But there's 2 of those. 2 Blighted Gorges. You can tap to add a colorless to your mana pool, or you can spend 4 and a red, sacrifice to deal 2 damage to target creature or player. And we got Tarfire. Tarfire deals 2 damage to target creature or player for 1. And it's tribal, a tribal instant. Brute Strength. Got quite a few of these cards. So yeah, okay, actually that's great because the Trample is what I was kind of looking for. So what was it? The Goblin Rabblemaster, to give him Trample until end of turn. In addition to an extra +3/+1, and he gets +1/+0 for each attacking other creature, and all other goblins have to attack if possible. So that could be basically a win condition right there for this deck. Krenko's Command, create 2 goblin tokens, 2 of those, 3 of those. Ghostfire, so 2 in a red. It is colorless. Ghostfire deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Something tells me this is probably from the Zendikar, or Battle for Zendikar block, or Return to Zendikar block, I guess what it was called. So 3 of those. Goblin Grenade. As an additional cost to cast Goblin Grenade, sacrifice a Goblin. Goblin Grenade deals 5 damage to target creature or player, and the flavor text is don't underestimate the aerodynamic qualities of the common Goblin, which is just awesome. And the art is a Goblin being thrown with what looks like TNT in its mouth. just for the flavor alone with the quotes and the artwork, I do love Goblins. I'm not a huge fan of red. Like red's the color that I probably play the absolute least in Magic, but this Goblin deck is something that I want to try. Hordeling Outburst, create 3 1/1 Goblin tokens. And Clever Riot, creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn, so that can be pretty rough as well if you got a Giant Trampler. And we just have all Goblin tokens. So there you go, those are the decks, and I'm interested to actually play these against one another. I really want to try these out, and even though I don't have anybody really handy to play with, I have heard of people just playing the 2 decks off against one another just as a practice thing, so who knows, I might try that just to try to get these, use these and see how they play, because I really want to try these out, especially the Goblin deck. Like I said, I don't like red that much in Magic, but this deck makes me want to play red. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below of these 2 decks. And again, with all the different Goblin creatures that are in here, it's possible that this could be sort of like at least the foundation for a commander deck, you could say, with probably the same thing with the Merfolk. Although I don't think the Merfolk actually had a legendary creature in there. So, Merfolk Warrior, yeah, I don't think they actually had a legendary creature, which is kind of unfortunate. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of these decks, and if you've had a chance to play these decks, where I probably won't for a while, let me know how balanced they are against one another. That's the thing I'd really want to see, because it looks like there's a lot of really cool interactions with these 2 decks, with the Island Walk, with the ability to sacrifice land, the Charbelcher thing. It just looks like there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with both of these decks. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think, if you've had a chance to play them, how they played against one another. And anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Funding for this channel is provided by the awesome support of my patrons on my Patreon page. And I'd like to provide a special thanks to Kennedy S. and David L. You guys really help make this possible for me to continue making these kinds of videos. So thank you to everyone who contributes. You guys are all awesome, and special thanks to David L. and Kennedy S. You guys rock.